welcome to the continued meeting from our March 4th City Council meeting, which was necessary because of the vote for the right-of-way abandonment. Is there any presentation that needs to be made at this point, or are we
No, ma'am, I think you
just ready for a motion?
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor, City Council adopt an order to permanently close a portion of an opened and improved right-of-way for Brown Street located on PN 9569-50-9133, 9569-50-8164, 9569-50-7165, and 9568-59-9771 as petitioned by Henderson County Hospital Corporation.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion? If not, those in favor of the motion for closing this portion of Brown Street, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Ayes have it, motion carries, and that has been taken care of. So the continued meeting is adjourned, and we can call to order our second monthly meeting that for Wednesday, March 24th. All ready for presentation.
Okay. Mayor, Vogt, members of the City Council, we have folks from the Children and Family Resource Center. If Jamie is on the line, if she would raise her hand. We don't see her name on the Zoom link, so Jamie, if you're here, raise your hand. We will ask Kelly and Sonia to unmute. Jamie may be with them, so we'll go from there. But we have Jamie Weiner from Executive Director for the Children and Family Resource to give an update on some of the activities of the Children and Family Resources and the importance of early childhood education. So I see Kelly's unmuted, so maybe Kelly or Sonia can talk, and I still don't see Jamie. So
not sure where Jamie is. I do have a copy of the presentation if I can share my screen.
all right, Kelly, you should be able to share your screen. There's Jamie.
Oh, good. We'll let Jamie share her screen.
Hi.
Hello.
I am so sorry. I really just wanted to make an entrance, so sorry about that. I had the wrong link, and I apologize for my tardiness. Should we just jump in? Everybody?
Yeah, you're ready.
All right. Awesome. Thank you. Sorry about that, everybody. I just want to thank everybody for this opportunity to be here as well. We really appreciate you inviting us. I'm Jamie Weiner, I'm the Executive Director at the Children and Family Resource Center, and we have Sonia from the Executive Director at Smart Start, and Kelly Hart as well, the Director of Programs at Smart Start. And so we just wanted to take a minute to tell you a little bit about the state of the child in Henderson County. Did you know that the child population in Henderson County is nearly 22,000, and of that, 29% are under the age of 6. We also have an average of more than 1,000 births each year in Henderson County. Also in Henderson County, 42% of children live in poor or low-income homes. 18% of children in Henderson County live in families that struggle to put food on the table. And health coverage is out of reach for 19% of adults in Henderson County. And at least 1 in 4 of these are parents. This is all data collected from NC Child in 2020.
The first 2,000 days of life are the most critical, and as Because the brain is so flexible and adaptable, it is where prolonged trauma becomes devastating, but also where positive interactions create solid foundations. Children exposed to poverty and other adversities are at greater risk for delays at all levels of development. One place where positive interactions occur is in an early childhood setting. When studies are done, they show that having that quality education increases salaries by 33%, shows higher graduation rates, shows higher reading and math scores, and overall improves better health and less chronic disease. Nobel laureate in economics, James Heckman, has done several studies over the course of many years, and he has shown that child development can demonstrate a high rate of return on investment, anywhere between 7 and 13%. On the left side of the graph, you'll see the highest rate of return from prenatal age to age 5, when investments in early childhood are made. Where else can we get that rate of return? The business leaders and economists are also their investments in early childhood. The U.S. Chamber says that its impacts are economic prosperity and is key to a competitive workforce. Global competitors invest as well. Like recently, China began making early childhood development a national priority. Military leaders say it's a matter of our national security. Senior retired military leaders formed Mission Readiness to call for smart investments in America's children. Mission Readiness has 3 policy agendas, and the first priority is expanding high-quality early education programs. Law enforcement is speaking up as well. They formed Fight Crime, Invest in Kids. They are calling on state and federal lawmakers to support high-quality early education programs as a critical strategy to reduce crime, lower corrections costs, and save taxpayers' money. They feel that you can either pay when children are young to give kids a strong start, or pay much more later if they don't.
So we here at Smart Start work with Children and Family Resource Center to support the early care and education industry in Henderson County. I'm going to give you a brief overview of what child care looks like in our community. Nearly 4,000 children under 6 in Henderson County live in families where their sole parent or both parents are working. The need for child care is critical to the economic viability of these families and our community at large. Here in Henderson County, we have 60 licensed facilities, of which 10 are our family child care homes. We have nearly 2,000 children enrolled across all of these programs. Licensed child care facilities are scored with star ratings based on their quality, with 5 stars being the highest, and the vast majority of our child care facilities have 4 or 5-star ratings. These small businesses directly employ 314 people, and directly impact the ability of thousands more to go to work, knowing that their children are in good hands. They also contribute to the economy through purchases of goods and services provided by other businesses in our community. In 2019, Child Care Services Association, a nonprofit in Chapel Hill, conducted an early care and education workforce study to learn more about the state of our youngest members of our communities, teachers and caretakers. Across the state of North Carolina, we find that the early care and education workforce is made up of largely women with at least an associate's degree that make less than a living wage. Nearly all early educators are women. About half are people of color. Teachers have an average of 12 years of experience, and directors of family child care home providers have an average of 20 years of experience. This survey included 29 directors and 100 teachers from Henderson County. And of those centers, like many of us, faced tremendous difficulty finding the supplies they needed to keep their children and staff safe. As you saw on the last slide, only 1/3 of our facilities can provide health insurance to their staff. Imagine going to work every day in such a high-risk setting without health insurance. As centers have positive cases, which many have, closures impact all the families served, as well as the staff who are often unable to when they're not working. Child care centers operate on tight margins in the best of times and rely on the tuition paid by parents and on subsidies provided by the state to keep their businesses afloat. COVID has caused unpredictable enrollment and vastly fluctuating income for these groups of businesses in our community, tremendous stress in the early care and education world.
So speaking of stress, let's talk about ACEs. ACEs stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. These are things like emotional abuse, physical abuse, neglect, caregiver mental illness, and household violence. So the higher a child's ACE score, the more ACEs that they have in their life, the more at risk they are for things like heart disease, diabetes, and substance abuse later on, and also for academic achievement. ACEs affect people at all income and social levels and can have seriously costly impacts across the lifespan. No one who has experienced significant adversity is irreparably damaged, but we do need to acknowledge that trauma has effects on their lives. So by reducing family sources of stress, providing children and adults with responsive relationships, and strengthening the core life skills that we all need to adapt and thrive, we can help prevent and counteract lasting harm. Trauma has powerful impact on individuals, organizations, communities, and entire systems. Experiencing many ACEs, as well as things like racism and community violence without supportive adults, can cause immense toxic stress. This repeated activation of the stress response can lead to long-lasting wear and tear on the body and the brain. The effect will be similar to revving a car engine for days or weeks at a time. We know that COVID has had negative impact on most vulnerable families in our community due to lost wages. And so we're preparing to see an increase in some of these abuse and neglect cases once children return to school as well. When many young children's social, emotional, and mental health is affected, we know that support for families and caregivers is going to be critical. Trauma that surrounds the pandemic now, we hope to create fertile ground for trauma-informed recovery in our community well beyond COVID and when this passes. So, what can we do? Well, we can invest in children. Investing in high-quality early childhood education, like Tom mentioned before, is an effective strategy for reducing long-term social costs. Programs like the Child Care Resource and Referral Program and our early childhood workforce development program, which is a training program for early childhood teachers. These create high-quality environments that not only impact the child, but strengthen our workforce today and prepare our future workforce to be competitive in the global market. Also know that you all have been talking about some family-friendly policies. Those are a great way to create long-term beneficial effects for not only the parent and the caregiver, the child, but also the employer. A healthier child leads to a healthier employee and reduces absenteeism and turnover. The Work Institute evaluated the average cost of turnover for an employee to be 33% of that employee's income. So nearly $15,000 for an employee making $45,000 a year. With some ideas on accommodations are creating a recipe-friendly space between telecommuting and working from home, predictive scheduling, things like that. Some additional family-friendly practices that are a little more of an investment are paid family medical leave. Our friends at And then there's a lot of traction at the state level about childcare right now, and so, we just have to support, the policymakers that are continuing to provide additional financial resources to stabilize this potential workforce. And then April is Child Abuse Prevention Month. So, we are asking folks to come together to build a caring connection, supportive environment, and positive experiences for all children. Last year, we were able to put some pinwheels downtown. If that's something that you all would be interested in, you can create a pinwheel garden to show your support to recognize Child Abuse Prevention Month. If that's something you're interested in, we would love to get you connected there. So I think we all spoke about 70 miles an hour, so if there's any questions, we'd love to answer any of those for you.
Anyone have questions for Jamie?
I have a couple, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
Jamie, can you tell us how, if you have any statistics or data on your fundraising for 2020, how much it was decreased?
I do not have exact numbers, but it has been significant. We have, we've eliminated events that we normally would have our largest groups for the year. We tried to be very creatively and shifted how we fundraise, but there's definitely been a decrease in funding for sure.
And then you used a word, I don't know, it was a few slides back about community resiliency, or what was it? Trauma response. Okay. So social services, has the FCT and the Duke Endowment Grant. Do those factor into that label or that title for a community, having those options and expanding the therapists that are capable of doing that? Because they were expanded with the Duke Endowment, and then they were also added in the substance abuse component to those families to focus on trauma for the children.
Absolutely, those are really helpful supports for trauma. The other thing that we're trying to do is really think on like a community-wide organizational level, like how are my employees affected by trauma? How are secondary trauma when they're in a home where they're with families that have really tough situations, and then they're taking that home to their families. So just creating this really big picture trauma response so that we can support staff and community partners with trauma responsive language and acknowledging that trauma exists and has lasting effects on our current moment situation, what happens tomorrow, and things like that. So just those are amazing supports, very specific, but this would be sort of a community-wide approach to how we talk about trauma and acknowledge that it exists and create that shared language and shared knowledge and shared experience for trauma for our entire community.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Hey Jamie, this is Lindsay. Can you send us your presentation? Because I got caught off a little bit, so I didn't see all of the data and stuff that was on it.
Absolutely, yep.
I have a question. You asked about putting the windmills up. Did you need us to, is that something you're planning to do, or do you really need us to give you permission?
Well, we did, last year, we put them outside the courthouse. I did ask permission, and mom said, or yes, the courthouse said yes. We'd love to, I've got packages of pinwheels in my office that I would love to bring back, or I can just put them out if you all are okay with it, and we can just, cover the town in pinwheels to support child abuse prevention, if you're okay with that.
I know we've had them in the past.
Didn't
I'm
they
good with it.
put them in the boxes on Main Street?
I know we had them right outside the
Do
door.
we have them outside here?
Mhm.
I think that's a yes.
Yes.
So, yeah, if there's specific locations that are more, that are acceptable, if we could just kind of communicate about that after this, just so I'm making sure that I'm not putting pinwheels where they're not wanted, that'd be awesome, that would be great, thank you.
Okay, I'm sure staff can work with you on that.
Okay, great.
Anything else? If not, thank you, Jamie and
Thank you
Sonia
so
and
much
Kelly.
for
We
your
appreciate it.
We really appreciate it.
next department update. Chief Myhand.
Well, good afternoon, Madam Mayor and Council. I am Blair Myhand, your new police chief, and thank you, John, for giving me the opportunity to give y'all an update on the department. And so I will, I think I maybe, if I'm in my 5th week now or 6th week or something, so I know a little bit about a few things, so I'm going to tell you kind of what I figured out from the time that I've been here. And Brian, if you'll go to the next slide and just kind of talk about what the intent of this presentation is. So I want to not take a lot of time, but I do want to give you a good of the organization, kind of where we think that we are at. The gentleman to my right are my executive staff, and they were very instrumental in putting a lot of this stuff together and giving me a lot of the institutional knowledge that I don't yet have. And so if you have questions at the end, I'm more than likely to get a point over here and have one of these guys answer for me. But we just want to give you some stuff so you can see the structure of our organization, sort of our workload, and maybe just some of our priorities and things that we want you to think about in the future. So next slide, please, Brian. We did a very quick initial SWOT analysis. So I'm happy to say that the sky is not falling at the police department. There are some really great strengths. I feel very fortunate in my new role here as the chief, that I inherited a really motivated and dedicated department. I think there are some young folks here that really want to be in Hendersonville. And we've got some really strong leaders. So you'll see later on the slide that we're very young and experienced in the department, but I think our mid-level leaders really sort of close that gap for us. So some really strong things there. I think you have probably heard some stuff about pay and benefits and lack of opportunities within the department that are some of the things that make it more of a challenge for us to recruit people and to retain some folks. But we've got some retirements coming up over the next, well, even this summer we have some mid-level leaders retiring. I have my executive staff in the next few years will be retiring. So that gives us great opportunities to promote some new folks, but that's also a risk as well, because we lose a lot of experience and knowledge. And so we've got to work over the next few years to really sort of mitigate that so we don't really get caught behind. But I think the strengths that we have here outweigh the weaknesses, and we've got a really great department that we're doing a lot, and I think there's opportunity for growth and people that want to stay here and grow this agency forward. So I think it's a good report on just an initial SWOT analysis, nothing official. The four of us kind of sat down and we threw some things out and put some things out here, but I'm excited. I maybe thought that it would be a little bit different, that there'd be a lot more people that are kind of unmotivated, and that's really not the case. They're really wanting to get to work and be here in this city and invest in this city. So next slide, Brian. So this right now is currently the organizational structure of the police department. And if you can see that, we are broken into 4 bureaus here. And so that's patrol, support, and investigations. And patrol is, in almost every police department, is the lion's share of staffing. So they have a lot of people, but their functions are fewer. Those are the folks that answer 911 calls, pull people over, handle traffic crashes, do the general police work in the organization. The way that we have it structured here is our patrol division or bureau is maybe larger than I would, that's a lot for one captain to manage all of that. But we have a lot of crossing guards and SROs and animal enforcement, all those sort of maybe specialty positions in a patrol division all fall under Captain Olson. So maybe there's some opportunities that we sort of even out that span of control in the future. Captain Cox is our support services captain, and there aren't as many people that work in his division necessarily, and he really has the civilian staff that are our telecommunicators and records and things, but you'll see on the next slide that the functions that he is responsible for are probably double what the other two bureaus are combined. You know, there's so many different facets of that. And then, of course, investigations, commanded by Captain Patton, has all of our detectives in it and our evidence. So evidence is of course a major function of every police department, and one of those ones that can get folks in a lot of trouble and managed properly. So there's a lot that goes with it. But that's kind of our structure right now. We have captains, lieutenants, and patrol sergeants, and that is our rank structure. Everything below that is either officer or detective. Next, Brian, please. So our next slide, this is sort of a representation of the functions of the individual areas. So you can see that patrol and investigations don't have nearly the amount of functions that they do, not to say that they're less important, but support services handles so much within the organization that actually goes through that, from managing our fleet to our building to our budget, you know, maintaining our police records. You know, the state has a lot of requirements on us as a police department to maintain records on employees, and of course all of our criminal cases that we have. Some of those are, you know, cases we'll never get rid of, for in perpetuity. So there's a lot that goes on with a lot of state requirements, but this is just sort of an indication of sort of how the functions are laid out, and I think that this is pretty common with most police departments. We're not out of whack with what other places are. I mean, this is very common. So next, Brian. So when we look at maybe some restructuring of the organization in the future to sort of even out the span of control and create what I would like, I don't know maybe the best way to describe it is, but what I'd like to do is that we funnel leaders to the top within the organization. And so my goal is, you know, one day when I retire, is I give the manager the opportunity to promote from within the organization to the chief of police. And the way to do that is to sort of, there's fewer positions available for the next level. And we start having those rising stars kind of make it to the top. And we put more responsibility on leaders throughout the organization. So this is just a complete concept, not something that we've even put anything into real work or anything, but just ways that we can maybe span the control better in the organization. And as the city grows and the department grows over the years, it's easier to add officers because we know where they go. And this is more positional based than it is individual based in the organization. And so as we grow the need for, you know, a domestic violence advocate or a mental health professional or other things in the organization, it's a little bit easier for us to kind of figure out where they go within the organization. So certainly not something that we're advocating for at this point. It just gives you maybe an idea of where we could structure the organization in the future. So as we transition to the next slide, we'll start talking about workload and some things that are taking place so you have a good idea of what officers are doing. So what this slide represents is a 25-year period. So on the left-hand side of that slide is the numbers in 1995, and then of course on the right side are the numbers today. So the blue line is the calls for service, and you can see that we're basically 20,000 more calls for service in 2020 than we were 25 years ago. And I imagine had COVID not been on the scene, it would have been a little bit higher than that, but those are the numbers. The green line is the basic population. So in 1995, my understanding is we were about 9,000 residents. Today we're 14,500 or so. The yellow line indicates the number of patrol officers that we had in 1995 and today. And that is a true flat line. So I think that number has fluctuated over the years, but we have the same number of patrol officers answering the 20,000 more calls for service than we had 25 years ago. So it's one of those things that you'll see that there are some issues that are rising in the city that we need to be thinking about in the future and how we're going to be able to handle that. Next slide, Ryan. So this is what we would say is your typical, what's occupying a patrol officer's time. So there's, I took out the calls for service because it made the slide, I think, unusable for y'all to understand. But, they're taking a little bit around 2,000 incident reports, and we did a 3-year history, and of course COVID was a downturn last year. Had we not had that, I would think we would stay steady or maybe see a slight increase. But I talked to some other peers of mine, and pretty much everybody in the state saw a downturn last year in their overall numbers. But you can see the things that what patrol does years time frame. And so this is really, it's probably the entire police department, but I think the patrol department, patrol bureau are the ones that are handling certainly all the incident reports and traffic stops, and we're maybe doing about, issuing half as many citations as we are stopping cars, which I think is a pretty good number because there's really not a correlation between the number of citations you write and crime prevention. We could write 1 million citations and it not reduce crime. Now, there is a correlation between the number of cars that we stop and the people that we interact with and have conversations and that does have an impact on crime. So I'm glad to see where, those numbers aren't even, because that would maybe indicate that we're, as somebody said, I have an open door policy. If I open my door, you're getting a ticket. Well, that's not a real good policy to have because it sort of upsets your community. So the numbers, I think, are pretty good with this. The one that is on here is crashes, and Brian, if you'll go to the next slide, I will talk about that. So this is an area that is alarming to me, and so we are the top line, the blue line. So we had, in 18 and 19, we were over 1,800 crashes, and last year we were just under 16, like 1,564, I think is what we were. So when Captain Nelson gave me those numbers, I said, I think that's high. That seems a little high to me. So I called some friends of mine around the state, and I called a chief of mine, friend of mine. They're the red line. They're the closest to us in population, and they were, hovering around 1,000 crashes last year. Leland, out by the coast, is about 25,000 folks, a little bit higher than us, and they're very low in numbers. And then Apex is almost 70,000 people, and they had about 1,100 crashes last year. So, to be honest, I haven't done the research to drill in to find out why we're so high, but we have very high crash numbers.
We could give you some guesses.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can help you with that.
But we have way more crashes than we should have for a community this size. Again, I don't know the reasons for that. I will tell you that I think we need to have a larger focus on traffic, for speed complaints, there's a lot of traffic here with the construction on I-26, there'll be a lot more traffic detoured through the city. I would think as things return to more normal, we may see those numbers creep up.
Are all crashes reported uniformly? I mean, is a crash is a crash is a crash?
Yes, but I don't know that this probably isn't every crash that happened. These are the ones that are reported to us. And so what I will say
Yeah, I was just wondering about in other cities.
what I did is ask them to give me, what I was looking for, total number of crashes that they responded to in their cities. I will say that of the crashes that happened in Henderson County, 65% of those, on a 3-year average, 65% of them happened in the city of Hendersonville that we responded to. So that's, again, I think there were 2,900 crashes in the county last year, and we had almost 1,600 of them just in our city. So it's high. We don't have a traffic unit, that really focuses on speed and the reasons that these crashes, what the contributing factors are. We don't have that. It's something that I think, we may want to talk about in the future and how we're going to do that. We can do it through grants and different things, but I don't know if these are injury crashes or parking lot crashes. I just don't know at this point, but the number is high.
Are they citation related or?
Some are, but these are just crash reports that we took this year.
It's just crazy.
and this is not all the crashes we responded to.
Rich,
Sorry, I'm new at this. This is not all the crashes we responded to. The form through DMV is the DMV 349. And this is all data from all these cities of how many they completed in the year. So if we got to a crash, minor damage, people settled amongst themselves, it's $100, give me $100, or, you promise to settle it, we'll settle it. Those numbers are not included. We responded more. This is the number of reports we did and all these other agencies did.
These are all reported
Yep.
officially
right,
Through DMV, yes, sir.
Wow.
yeah. So what Rich is saying, someone may have handled it before we got there, or we got there and they just agreed to handle it, so this number is probably a little bit higher. I don't know if it's 5% or 10% higher, I'm not sure, but it's not less than what you're seeing on this list. But it is an alarming rate to me, and it's, that this affects everybody's automobile insurance and all those sorts of things. So just something that for y'all to be aware of if you hadn't sort of seen how we compare to other people. Because if I told you we had 1,500, you'd say, okay, that sounds good, not knowing, we're sort of out of line with somebody. Yes, sir, Joe.
At some point in the future, could you also give us the same statistic and just do it by counties?
Oh, yeah, the
I think
state does a
it's by
great job
cities.
by county,
Right.
just not by municipality. Yeah, we can certainly do that.
Okay.
That's easy. You can Google that yourself tonight, but yeah, we can certainly give you a better idea of where we stack. My understanding from talking to these guys is we may not be number one anymore, but at some point we were at or near the very top of the list of the number of crashes in the state, but we're still pretty high, so,
Slightly behind Nashville,
yeah.
who's ahead of us, yes.
So, enough about crashes. Brian, if you'll go to the next slide. So what I'm trying to show you in this slide is what I alluded to earlier about our experience within the organization. So I forget the exact numbers, I can add them up here real fast, but I think about 75% of our department has less than 10 years experience. We have a lot of really young officers, a lot of them have 18 months on the job right now. And again, that's sort of concerning for me, but I am very happy to know that we've got some really good squad, lieutenants that run squads, really great leaders that sort of help these folks out. And, I can't imagine starting in law enforcement 18 months ago and had the things that they had experienced in their first 18 months with COVID, with George Floyd, and all the things that have happened in this country. That had been a really very weird time. So I'd be curious to see what that looks like for their careers long term, how they're going to view this. But we have a lot of inexperienced folks, and we have a lot of people, we have a few people with a lot of experience, but we're going to be losing those folks in the next few years, which is, again, not really uncommon in this profession. We saw a lot of people leave over the last 24 or 12 months to go do other things because they just decided this wasn't really what they wanted to do anymore. But we definitely have a lot of experience we need to plus folks up. So last two slides, Brian, if you'll go to the next one.
May I ask a question about that?
Yes, ma'am.
If someone has military experience, does that classify under law enforcement experience, or are these just as if they were an officer of some sort or law enforcement in the military, does that count here?
It depends. So we would consider if they had military police experience in that number.
Okay.
But this is probably, I don't know that we have anybody other than Rich who's a military police officer. So in this case, I would have that in a number, but I don't think we really have anybody that qualifies for what you're talking about.
Okay.
So, but just like my military experience would not count as police experience in that.
Okay.
Yeah.
If we were to see the same slide from where your prior employment before coming here, how much different would those lines look?
Not a lot. What I think I've seen a lot of places, if there's a big gap in the middle. We don't have a lot of 10 or 15-year folks. I don't know why that is. Some of that, when I came on the job, the old timers were the guys that came on after Vietnam, and of course they were leaving. And so, they hired a bunch at that time. So that might be what we've seen over the decades. We had like an influx that came in a few-year period, and then maybe a recession happened. There wasn't a lot of hiring, but I don't think we again this is a big alarm for us. I think a lot of people are like this. It is just one of those things, those factors that we have to really think about, you know, because you only get experience through time. We can't speed that up other than, you know, you like with your kids, you know, you can give them experience if they listen to you, but they still have to touch the hot pot to know how hot it is, right? And that's kind of, folks have to just answer calls and be here a while. So we're not in any sort of risk with it, but it is something that we think about because you need experience in the agency, which is why retention is so important. Okay, so a couple of things that I think there were some priorities for us. One of the things I really want to do, I'm a big believer in a mission statement, and we have one that no one really knew existed, and they certainly don't know what it says, so I want to create that. I think that helps folks make good decisions in the middle of the night when the chief's not there and the captain's not there. So I want to do that. I've been thinking for a long time of creating a group. And I'd like to do it before y'all tell me I have to do it. But I'd like to have a group of people that we can work with, that we can talk to, who can help us make better decisions about what we do in the community. I'm a firm believer that we serve our community, and if we're not listening to them, I don't know that we're doing a very good job at that. There is some interest. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what it's called. I don't know what authority they'll have or not have, but it's something that I want to do. I don't know if we do it tomorrow or 6 months from now, but it needs to be not 6 years from now. You know, we need to do this, and I want it to be representative of all segments of our community. Jeff, I'd really love to have a high school student on there. You know, maybe someone who's...
One that gets in trouble a lot, or one that...
I mean, it could be either one. I mean, you know, maybe it's good for them, but, you know, someone who's, you know, maybe wants to do something in political or what, I mean, you know, a senior
I'm
or...
just kidding, that's no doubt.
But it could be someone who maybe needs to see some other stuff. I think there's a lot of benefits from it, but I'd like to have people from different, you know, all different parts of our community. Not a 25 person, just, you know, a handful of people that we can build relationships with and talk to, and so we want to do that. I want to create a strategic plan here. I think it's important for us to be focused on what we're doing and know that we're investing, you know, our money in the right ways, and so a couple other things we've got working on this summer, because we've got some 2 lieutenants that we expect to be retiring, you know, before the end of this year at least, and so that's going to create some opportunities. We're really trying to develop our training, have core training for people, and our policy manual is outdated and needs serious revision, so Chief's going to be working a lot of hours doing that, and it's easy for me to just take my old manual and change the names and give it to everybody. I don't necessarily want to do that, but some of these we're going to have to do pretty quickly because they're putting us at risk for different things. And so I'll do that with some, but I will get a lot of input on those. If y'all weren't aware, the department is one of the first in the state to be accredited through the North Carolina League of Municipalities Risk Reduction Review Program. We did that about 3 years ago. So great job on that. That is a program designed to reduce our liability in high liability areas like canine pursuits, use of force, you know, emergency driving, things like that. So the department has already received that accreditation. It is time for us to do that again. So we will get back, re-enroll in that. It does help with our insurance costs, so we want to do that. The state is also developing the North Carolina Law Enforcement Accreditation Program. I think it's important that we do that. I don't know how long it's going to take before it's actually started up and how many they can do a year, so it might be a couple of years before we can actually get involved in that, but it's important for an organization for me to be able to tell you that we are in line with what other agencies around the state are doing. There is an international association called CALEA, which is the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies, which is sort of the big one. And I'm an advocate for that, but it's certainly not something I'm going to say, you know, we must do, because there's a cost with it, a more significant cost than the leagues is, I think, free, right, Tracy? In the states, it will be a very nominal cost to do that. CALIA probably costs us anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 a year. We have to, it's labor intensive, it almost needs a person, you know, a position to manage that. So there's a significant cost. I think there's a real value in doing that, particularly in today's climate, that we can say on an international scale that we are meeting the standards that this commission says. But that's a conversation for another day, but I do believe that it is important for this department to be accredited, because you as a resident have no control over who answers the 911 call. But us as an organization to be able to show people through accreditation that we are meeting these standards that someone else says is what you should be meeting is a, you know, I think is a signal that we have a professional organization, and it's not just relying on the person who sits in my position to make sure we're doing things the right way. There's a review body of professionals that look at us and tell us, yes, you're meeting these standards or you're not. Now my last slide before we'll open up to any questions are some of the things that we think we'll need to be thinking about in the future. That one of those is a sustained vehicle replacement program. We've had some conversations about, you know, they get worn out. They get a lot of idle hours. If a police car has 100,000 miles on it, some studies say that it has 300,000 miles because of idle time, and the emergency driving is not the same as when you take your Camry to the English. You know, it's a lot different on a car. We want to make sure that we are reviewing equipment and replacing things and embracing new technologies as they come open. We want to certainly plan for growth in the future. Some of the things that, you know, we talked again about salaries and benefits for all employees. And one of the two big areas is we need a recruitment strategy. I talked to the BLET class at Blue Ridge Community College yesterday, and we are just not, we're not recruiting the way that we should be at this point. And we're, you know, other than going and encouraging people or word, you know, mouth to mouth, we don't have an official strategy. So we need to really change that, because we do need to attract some diverse candidates, and they're just not coming in droves. You have to go out and find folks and bring them in here. And so we want to make sure that we do that. There's a lot of interest in the department to do that. And then one of the last areas is a career progression. And so we've been talking, having conversations with Chief Hanshead was here, with the manager and assistant city manager about a career progression. And so no details of it for you at this point, but what it does is it incentivizes people to better themselves through training and education, which in theory betters the entire department and gives us a better work product in the end. And so, you know, I know that if I came on as a police officer and knew that I had no opportunity for advancement, that's kind of a hard pill to swallow when I'm thinking I got a 30-year career. But if I know that there are levels for me to achieve, because if I never want to get promoted, it gives me something to work for, and or maybe I get my degree completed, or I do different things that are going to make us better at doing our job. And so there's a big interest in the organization for that. I'm an advocate for it, and I will, you know, argue why we need it. It's important for our folks. But that's really the presentation. I think last time, Brian, is just questions. So, council, what are your questions?
Oh, Mayor,
Right in.
I was kind of taken aback by, this is 1995 compared to 2020. Population of the city of Hendersonville, 9,000, now 14,000 plus. 24 patrol officers then, 24 patrol officers now. I mean, if you just do a little bit of basic math, you can see that, I mean, probably ought to be around 36 or something, but where, and I know you're talking about restraining and some, but just how far under are we with the amount of accidents and calls and police?
It's hard for me to say, but I will say that we need do need to add people to patrol. And these guys, Rich, you may go say, I think we had more patrol officers at a time, but we maybe reallocate them to specialty positions. Is that?
I think over, in the 25 years, basically this is my first year doing it now. That's how we started that. The patrol, then we had 8-hour shifts and 8 per shift. Of course, they covered 7 days, so it wasn't 8 at a time, but it was spread out. And I think the city's done a very good job dealing with specialty issues, our addition of 2 animal enforcement officers. We went from 0 to 1 and now 4 SROs. So our specialties, we filled out, our business district officer, and one to help the housing authority. So we've done that. But the basic level on patrol, the ones answering the calls every day, has not changed since that time. It's just how it is. We've added elsewhere, but never to patrol.
And Jeff, what I would say is, I could, if I did the workload analysis, and we can do that and give you, based on a formula, how many officers we need. And let's say, for the sake of argument, I told you I needed 8 more officers today. Well, the reality is, even if y'all said, yep, we're gonna fund it, no problem, we can't onboard 8 officers. I don't even know that we can find 8 that we can. So this is something that we're gonna have to phase in over a couple of years, only because, like, if we brought 8 new police officers today, I don't have enough FTO, trainers to train these folks. So, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you, we gotta have this today, but we are doing more with less. And I think that one of the stats was that we are handling basically twice as many calls for services as the sheriff's office is, because they have more deputies, and we just, we're doing like 1,000 per officer a year, and they're doing, I forget what the number is.
Just under 500, sir,
Yeah, so,
per officer per year.
it's significant, and first year cost of a police officer is high. It's like, it's about $120,000 to onboard an officer in the first year. It's not every year after that, but with equipment, first year cost is kind of expensive. So, but it's something that I think the city will need to consider how we want to make sure that we don't get way.
Yeah, that's why I just wanted kind of a ballpark, because it just seemed.
I think 8 to 10 is a reasonable number to have in your head of just patrol officers going to patrol squads, answering 911 calls. And we can do that. We can maybe change some of our positions back to patrol, or we can, ask for GHSP to give us a grant for personnel, which I would certainly be in favor of. That's a pretty good grant to get that would focus just on traffic. But so, I took off the numbers when I sort of did the organizational charts, but I think the first one, where we're at today, total employees is about 68. I think the other slide was like 77, so that gives you an idea of, 8 to 10 employees would, I think, put us in a really good position. And that would just make it where, as council, over the years, if we add 5,000 people, where it's going to mean this many more police officers and firemen, water sewer folks. I mean, y'all know, as we get bigger, you just have to add more.
Because what we do there has a big impact on your recruitment strategy too. I mean, if it's how we do it all, I mean, you're kind of dependent on the council stepping up, give you the tools you need, or the things, buy the tools you need. So it's, that number just really slacking.
I didn't mean slack.
It was a good slack.
And the crash data is kind of skewed too, like 2020s, according to the NPO statistics that we saw from the Friends Broad NPO, DOT data from state highway, and just general traffic and crashes, and they were all down significantly in 2020 because there were less people for 70 months. And so I think I'm really scared what 2021 is going to look like, because it's going to be shooting straight up because we had that lull in 2020.
I did ask Captain Olson to look back, and we have had a steady increase over the years, probably by 10% each year. So we were not low in 16, 15, 14. It was still 16, 1700.
And I think it's like 27 something percent, if I can remember that number, that stuck out, of decrease due to COVID
Which
from
is,
traffic
we had
restrictions.
about a 30% decrease this year. Yes, Jerry?
You got this thing called Safer Grants for firefighters. Do they have something like that for police officers?
They do have COPS grants, and they just did one last year that the federal government is going to do. I don't know when they'll open up another round, but certainly, you know, we would definitely explore those when those opportunities come up. GHSP is the Governor's Highway Safety is a good one. It is traffic only, but it's generally a 3-year grant, 85, 75, 50, or 55%, and 100% on equipment. But I think, Jared, the COPS grant may not be open for another 2 years. And so we would have to see if we make the argument.
Those letters you said, the governor's organization, that is hiring police officers, but they're specifically designed for traffic control?
Governor's Highway is, yes. We would make the argument that we have a need and we want officers to perform traffic duties. And Governor's Highway Safety has gotten very tight now. If they're doing something other than traffic enforcement or investigating crashes, they're not reimbursing. So we pull them off to go, you know, work even a special event or, you know, go to training, unless it's traffic related. You know, the grant won't reimburse us for it. So that's their job for 3 years. Now, after 3 years, we can do with them what we want, and we've got whatever equipment, you know, vehicles and all that stuff that the grant will pay for is ours. But it's a great grant, and I definitely would say that it's something we ought to think about, particularly given our statistics. Jeff, before to kind of say like how many, I don't know that we need like 10 brand new cops. Maybe we look at how some of the functions that we're doing, or maybe other ways that we can do those that'll free up some cops to go do, you know, more traditional police work stuff. So, but certainly something we can really look at how we're going to skin this cat. So.
Other questions?
I don't know if the question's really for Chief, I think it's more for you. I love the idea that you want to set up a citizens council, because I know I brought that up before. What do we gotta do to do that? I know we have a lot of councils, and I know that we struggle to get people on them, but I do think that this one, people would be interested in, because a lot of people over the summer, specifically, emailed about something like that. So what are we gonna do? I'm the chief, let's do it sooner than later.
Well, John, before you say anything, I would like to do it. I'm fine if the council said you want to create an advisory board and did it that way. My preference has always been to do this a little more organically, particularly not till we get to a point where a council says you will do this and this is what they're going to be responsible for. I really want to, you know, have the opportunity to build this thing. I don't know what it is or what it's called, and grow it and have, you know, because inevitably, you know, we're going to make a mistake. It's going to happen at some point. We're humans. We're going to make a mistake. But I think if we've really invested in the community and really built relationships with people, they're going to be a lot easier to forgive us for, you know, some boneheaded mistake that we made. And I think that will pay dividends for the city, and that we don't see unrest that maybe other folks who didn't have those relationships. But I'm happy to tackle this however the council sees fit, but I have been thinking about it for a while and really believe it's important for us to do, whether that's council directed or y'all just say, good, go for it, chief, and we do it.
Chief, I'd like to see you build it, and we go from there. I mean, that's just so impressive that you and your department want to do this. There's no way I want to step in here and try to tell you how to do it. I'd like to see what you come up with my 2 cents.
Same. Okay. Anything else? All right. I think this was eye-opening. Thank you.
As my first presentation, I told everybody, I said, well, I hope I don't screw this up. So I hope I did a good job and I certainly didn't want to, you know, make it sound like the sky was falling and everything was terrible,
I
because it's
just
not.
urge you to be careful driving home.
Look both ways.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank y'all so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
works.
Okay.
It is.
Oh, it's already going forward, so. Madam Mayor, members of council, so today I'm happy to provide some time. We won't slap Jeff with too many numbers, but there will be some numbers for Jeff to react to for this one. We also have our HR director, Jennifer Harrell, with us. I call her our HR hero, mainly one, she likes comics and superhero movies, but she also is the city's HR hero. She knows a whole lot about what's going on. Her team works extremely well with our employees and is looking out for them first thing, and also the city as well. So today, we're going to take some time and talk through, oh man, I lost it. Thank you, John. Thank you.
John, you sure you can do that?
No, I'm not sure.
But we're going to talk about the paying classification program and give an update on that.
Is there a button you're pushing, Brian?
Yeah, see if you can get to the front one there. Perfect. All right, so desired outcome today, we're going to review the plan and we're going to receive guidance on the city's pay philosophy. So hopefully keep it simple, keep it straightforward, and we can rock through this. So next slide, John. A quick update on the timeline. So if you recall back in our previous budget development, we approved the pay classification study for this current fiscal year that ends on June 30th, 2021. So we began by issuing a request for qualifications in July of 2020, maybe a little before that, and we ended up selecting a firm called Evergreen Solutions in around September of 2020. At that point, we started the plan, we started the scoping, we started figuring out how we're going to implement this type of study, especially during COVID. We got to October and November, and we had our project kickoff and started some of our initial data collection. And then in December, we decided as staff that it was probably best to delay the in-person aspect of this study, which is a critical part of the study where the consultant goes out and speaks with our employees. And most of our employee base is operational focused, and it's going to be difficult to get them all in a room and have meaningful interactions with the consultant, buy-in from our employees through some sort of virtual platform. So at that point, we felt it was more important to have key employee buy-in and key employee input. So we delayed the project so we could have a better in-person attendance for the research on that end. So we're here today in March. We're talking about pay philosophy. This is a key aspect. We're talking about today because we're hoping to start gearing up to engage with employees and start, heading down the rest of the project. May and June, we're hoping to engage employees with employee outreach and the JATs, which are job assessment tools. And then at that point, continuing into the next fiscal year, July through September, evaluate and build the plan, and then come back to City Council in December, sometime in the late fall, and say, here's what we found, here's what we think we should do, here's what we heard from the pay philosophy, here's what it's going to take to implement this, and do some sort of mid-year amendment, mid-year action to start addressing those pay and benefits needs. Next slide, John. Thank you. So from the task we've got kickoff and scoping done. We're in task 2, which is evaluating the current system. So we're talking through job descriptions, pay plan. We've done that. We've drafted a list of comparable organizations. So Asheville, Buncombe, Henderson County, those types of things. And we're here today to talk about pay philosophy. Again, task 3, then we're engaging with employees, talking through job descriptions, finalizing our comparable list and doing a market survey of those current salaries. And then task 4, we're evaluating and building the plan. So how do you develop a pay philosophy? So consultant, and you've been provided with this, it's got little trees at the top left corner of the paper. We're going to go through this in kind of reverse order. There's 4 key questions that we're going to talk through today with you, City Council, and get a feel for where we want to be as an organization. So the first question is based on reward strategy. So what is the city's reward strategy, and what basis will salaries progress? That can either be like time-based or based on or position, or it can be merit-based, so your performance is evaluated and your salaries salary structure design does the city want to administer? So this is either an open range, which is a little more flexible, a step range, which is something like a career progression strategy, like you heard from the police update, or some sort of hybrid of the two. Question 3, we need to understand if we have any key total compensation updates, and we're going to give you a sneak peek at one of the recommendations for the budget coming up for our May workshop. And then question 4, this is kind of the big question, what position does the city want to be in? Do we want to lead our peers? Do we want to align with our peers? Or are we going to lag our peers? And there's obviously pros and cons to all those options. Next slide now. So the reward strategy, the first question. Give you a little bit of background. Our current model is a hybrid. So we have a performance pay program. So employees are eligible on their performance reviewed with their supervisors to get 1 of 3 increases or no increase at all. We also provide the time-based options. We provide cost of living adjustments yearly, and we also provide longevity increases, which are based on your time with the city. So our staff recommendation for this question, this is probably the most basic question. We would recommend continuing with the current model, reviewing percentage increases annually for the budget, and also providing that performance-based increase to, encourage employees to perform. Next slide now. So structure it gets a little more complex as we go. So our current model is an open model. It's slightly a hybrid model in some instances, which I'll talk a little more in detail about. We have a pay scale. It's a broad range of pay for each classification of each position, and it's adopted annually. The advancement in the scale is based on this kind of hybrid pay model, though. So there's some non-competitive positions. So some departments have kind of leveraged their wherewithal and said, hey, we want to tier out this position and allow maybe for a civil engineer to increase to a civil engineer 2 upon receiving certain certification. So there is some instances step type model, but it's based on merit in a way. So we're slightly in that hybrid realm, but we're not fully there. What our recommendation would be is to go completely to that hybrid model, where we're still having a pay scale that's adopted annually that provides us that flexibility to place people within the pay scale based on qualifications or experience, but also building something out like a career progression ladder like you heard from the police department. So essentially, like an example would be you'd have police officers 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and you get to those positions from a non-competitive basis, right? That position doesn't have to be like an open, vacant position to get promoted to that position. However, police sergeant would be a competitive position. So installing a model like that with all departments, Adam is a good example. He's a senior analyst right now for us, and that was based on his ability to achieve a certain certification to get to that level. So we have that, and then we also had an open pay scale where you would progress. Once you got police officer 3, you still got your annual salary increases based on your time, and you also got it based on your merit or your performance. Question 3, plan changes. So this is our proposal for the FY22 budget. These are just the things that have an impact on the total compensation package. So to consulting this philosophy. So our first thing is to increase health insurance dependent coverage to 75% as a city cost versus 50%. And we'll talk a little bit about that on the next slides. And then also considering that paid family leave proposal. Next slide now. This will be a little more difficult to see, but we can see on this page is our 2 plans, our PPO plan, and our HSA. And broken out for each of those is employee only, employee spouse, employee child, employee children, and employee family coverage for each of those grades. We've got annual costs on the left and monthly costs on the right with the same kind of breakdown of columns. The first 2 columns are the city costs for the columns, 75%, and then the 2 on the right are the employee costs at 50% and 75%. So probably the best one of these to look at is that monthly cost on that far right. I've highlighted that one. You can see employees at 50% right now for family coverage. This is assuming that we've been told we're going to get a 3% decrease in our premiums for FY22 budget, so that's built into this. You can see the monthly cost for an employee paying family coverage right now is $690 a month, or $8,282 a year. it's 75% coverage, it's $345 a month. So it, cuts it in half. It's a very impactful item for the total compensation package for an employee working with the city. And also HSA is a little bit less than the premiums and the PPO. That comes with different aspects to it. So the total FY22 impact is estimated to be about $127,000 broken out across all our funds. Next slide, John.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
The number, percentage 75%, is that based on some industry average? Like when you got 75%, is that like competing with another police department? Or when you come up, where did you come up with 75%?
50%, 75%, those are just the percentage of cost that the organization will cover.
No, I get that. I just didn't know if you, because I believe that's where we are now.
Yes.
Right. But the 75%, you could have chosen 60, 65, whatever. Is 75% because maybe like another police department does that? That's my question.
So we know some comparable costs for other health insurances, and we are still much higher, so we need to take a pretty substantial step in that direction, which just cutting that in half, going from 50% to 75% was a good option. And if you go to the next slide, John, I'll show you a comparable.
I didn't mean to say police departments. I mean I should have said just other municipal employers. Is that comparable with what they do? That's
So,
what we're going.
yeah, so your competitor on this slide, the family coverage is $260 a month. So ours right now is $711.50, and that was our premium decrease. But our proposal is to bump up to 75% coverage so that we can start creeping into that more competitive range.
Do we have a competitor's name that you can tell us outside of this meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And the starting, I guess, and the starting pay is, this is for officials in the city, the same position, and this is what we're competing with for recruitment and hiring and retention, is $16.90 an hour for the city, about $36,900 a year. That same position in another organization is hiring at $18.06 or $38,600 a year. And then that family coverage being a really big impact. And we have had direct experience loss or retention challenges or even hiring challenges based on our dependent coverage policies.
I have a question. Is there a level of participation from the employee that they would participate in some sort of wellness type program to be able to qualify for? So my personal opinion is that we should cover even higher than 75%. That's what we should be doing for our employees. But there also has to be accountability on the employees' part as well as, diet and exercise and taking care of themselves. And, I like a program that rewards an employee for participation in those aspects. So if there was a base at this amount of money, and then if you participate in these programs and you're meeting these numbers, or, then you get,
Yeah, we already have an incentive-based program in place, and they have to participate in the wellness program. They have to complete their preventative health measures and preventative programs. And doing that, it allows them to get the full coverage from the city. And then we don't have anything baked into the dependent coverage. But so if you're not participating in the program, you're only getting 85% coverage from the city. The employee would be responsible for 15% if they're not participating.
wait, where is that number at now?
So that's, if you go back one slide, that is fully on the employee. So that employee costs $9,254. We cover the 100% of the employee if they meet the program.
Yeah, actually, and our insurance company, they have a surcharge of 10% if they don't do that. So in the city, because they back to 15, yes, could be a possibility.
Any other questions there? All right, John. Okay, and lastly, and something, we're not gonna have I don't think we'll have a specific answer today, but just getting a feel. So, our current model, based on the last 2016 paying class, we aligned with the competition. It took 3 years to implement the program, and we pay scale was not significantly changed since that 2016 alignment. So our staff recommendation would be providing city council, based on what we've heard from the variety of retreat, is different lead models with budget impacts from 55% and up, and see where city council wants to land, because you could have a 65% lead, and that 65% is saying, here's your market comparison, here's the 50% level for that position of that market we looked at. So a police officer, of all the organizations we looked at, 50% is $38,000, making up numbers. We want to be, when we hire at 55%, we'll be at $38,800 at our hiring rate. So that's the decision we're going to need to make when we get all those numbers back, and we come to you in the late fall, December timeframe. So our recommendation is we provide you a kind of a layout of all the different budget impacts, a couple different options to implement it, and also we want to make sure we don't forget to address compression, and any employees who might have been here for a certain amount of time, pay scale moves, you're then hiring brand new employees at the same rate as them. So we want to recommend we do not forget to address compression in the study. So any questions on this question quickly? Otherwise, we're going to tie it together and kind of seek overall feedback on these 4 questions. So what we've heard is supporting employees is a really high priority to the city council. We want to provide growth opportunities through job, class, and educational tools to our employees. Respecting and paying employees fairly, this leads to employees providing good community services. We want to improve overall pay and benefits so that no employees are on government subsidies. And we want enough pay to support a family for our employees. We've heard that over the past year or so with the city council. Got next slide. So where we're going, again, we're at pay philosophy. We really need to nail this one down. So when we start developing all of these assessments and figuring out where we want to be, we can come back to you with a really good model that you can look at and say, here, we're ready, let's pull the trigger on this direction. So next slide, John. So what are we missing? What are your thoughts on the staff recommendations related to these questions? What other questions do you have?
I'm just glad you brought up the issue of compression, because we can't just look at raising that starting level. It's got to go all the way from there up, and I think it has to be equally respectable and as it should be, because you don't want to bring people up to that level and then lose them. And right now that's what's happening. So I think we need to hit this hard. This might be a bitter pill one way, but delivery of service is everything. If we're going to expect that, we have to respect and prove it with all our employees.
With regard to question number 4, if we were in the lead category, what is your proposal for how often we would adjust? Like, let's say we're 65%. I mean, how is it? We kind of do these every 4 years. Would that be the same concept every 4 years? We look at what the market is and we just say, okay, 65%, well, that's where we want to be. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, so ideally we would be doing these every 4 years, that's a good standard, but also every year in between, we would be considering, some sort of inflation. So the same kind of amount of inflation that we're adjusting for, we would kind of bump up the pay scale and try to, so it's not as much of a hit in 4 years.
But wouldn't that, what you're discussing, isn't that under the question 1? Maybe we can, like, these are not all mutually exclusive, right? This is all together, these questions.
Yeah, it's all together. And so, yeah, question 1 is kind of like that employee reward, right? So that's the employee's inflation adjustment. However, question 2, so our structure, that pay scale, we need to make sure we're adjusting that. So when we adjust employees 1%, we move the pay scale 1%. That way, when we hire a new firefighter or hire a new water treatment plant operator, they're coming in at a higher rate than the previous year.
Right, so I'm trying to connect, so then I guess question 4 is, when you're looking at 1 and 2, you're looking at, are we doing those two things at the 65%, if that was the number we chose?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, I got it.
Can we go back to something that Jennifer brought up earlier, which was like the, if the dependents participate in getting their mother, getting their physical, getting their whatever tests they're supposed to be getting, can we offer more? So like if you're a single employee and you get your physical and you get whatever other test you're supposed to get yearly, that we cover at 100%, could we do something similar? If dependents were to do that, because I know like with Tony's Insurance at Home Depot, they do something similar, so the dependents do a blood test or whatever, then you qualify for a special discount. I know that makes it more complicated.
Actually, our insurance company does that
Yeah,
for the
yeah.
adult spouses.
Oh, I didn't realize we did it for
Adults.
dependents too.
Yes.
Yeah, we get the letter, and you see it, it says, do it or you're gonna get bought.
Yeah, they do. The city does not do that portion for them, but increase that portion because, the dependents can't join our wellness program. They can't. Well, I want to say that, because we do, on our wellness program, give vacation hours. So we don't give any other incentive on that.
Okay, I guess I was
But-
confused about which was, where it was housed.
Yeah, actually, the insurance company does. They do, anybody over 26, which would be a spouse on the plan, they would have to participate in the annual screenings.
Okay.
But I assume by adding more people into that, that cost would not be, the cost benefit would not work, because then you're paying for more services essentially than what you would actually be paying out in the insurance.
Probably.
Like, it just wouldn't make sense to add children into that plan,
Into the.
Wellness
yes,
plan.
right, Yes.
just because of the added cost that you'd be paying for those services.
Right.
I have a question, and that is, in looking at health insurance coverage versus more pay, do you have a judgment as to short term, which of those two is more important?
So from, my position, more pay is more equitable to everyone because everyone is eligible for that. However, the dependent insurance is a critical need for our organization and it is affecting retention, recruitment, and morale. And it is higher than comparables and is something that we're recommending in our budget proposal right now to go ahead and take care of July 1st, where, pay plan December, January.
So I know that we don't make votes or policies, but I would like to see that bumped even higher than the amount that you guys are proposing for families.
We can certainly provide you those
I'm
percentage levels
a
and
physician in this
costs.
community, and, when I see, like, a city employee, for instance, who has a $50 copay to my office, with a family, that's a lot of money. And then you multiply that by, other visits in town for children or whatever, copays, and then the fact that they're already paying so much money to have the insurance, it's just, for that demographic and that income level, I just would like to see it better.
Yeah, we can show you the different tiers.
And it doesn't seem like bumping it up 10% or even 25% would be that much.
Probably said there was
127,000 for that.
120 years.
Just by the 25%. So
Right.
you're looking at a quarter, essentially, by going up an additional 25%. Is that roughly
That's more than a quarter.
250,000 if the first one's 127?
Quarter
Yeah.
million.
Oh, yeah, you're saying quarter
I
of
thought
an
you said a quarter on the
Yeah,
tax
quarter,
rate.
yeah.
No, I like to use
What
like
is it?
big dollar words these days, $250,000.
Quarter.
Just not drop like a quarter. Come on, it's all pocket change. So, in the grand scheme of it though, keeping employees and keeping them here and, allowing them to afford to live and pay for their health care, I think it's not that big.
Heck of an incentive, so.
I want to see see some options on, you know, the different levels, and tide increases, and compression. Yeah, let's look at the big picture, tie it all together. We might not do it all at once, but we gotta have a path.
Yeah, we can certainly provide tiers and we can provide comparables too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll leave it at that. I just look forward to investigating this more, because that change on the health insurance would be a lot different than some other government organizations in this county. It's better than, yeah, that's what I mean.
That's what we need to be.
Brian, you got what you need? You got it good?
Yeah.
Go good?
Do you need anything more specific from us?
I think as long as, you know, kind of what I captured on what we've heard is, you know, we're in the right ballpark and we're moving in the right direction. I think we're good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any more comments on this right now?
Thank you, Brian.
Oh, this is last.
If not,
Gotta get to it again.
we are adjourned.
Yes, ma'am.